Good morning, everyone. In the last lecture, we have discussed about the evolution of legal system, and that lecture is very significant for a law student because that lecture helps us to understand the concept of legal system, what is the history of legal system, how to understand the different periods of history, how to relate history with law, how to trace the roots of law, how to understand the philosophy, the history and sociology of legal system. So in that way, that lecture becomes very significant, very important, very much relevant. Now, the lecture we are going to discuss or we are going to study is Max Weber understanding of legitimacy and rationality. Already we have discussed about the concept of legitimacy, and I'm sure you are aware about, you are clear with what is legitimacy and what is rationality. But in today's lecture, we will try to understand how Max Weber understands legitimacy and rationality. So the interpretation by Max Weber becomes the central objective of this lecture. So there are two objectives of this lecture. Number one is to discuss the Weberian understanding of legitimacy. Weberian means we're talking about Max Weber. To discuss the Weberian understanding of legitimacy means we will discuss about how Max Weber understands the concept of legitimacy. See, these all concepts are very, very, very much important for you, and you have to understand. And without understanding such terminologies, you'll not be able to understand the technical or the technicality of law. So try to understand more about the concept and try to use this concept when you will understand and or when you will try to explain or study any particular law. So the first objective is to discuss the Weberian understanding of legitimacy. Number two is to discuss the Weberian understanding of rationality. So when it comes to legitimacy, legitimacy means we're talking about it's the consent to use the power. So somewhere, if you look at India, we're talking about a democratic India. We have an elected government, and who is electing that government? We the people of India. So who is giving them that consent? With the people of India. So we, the people of India, are giving them consent. We are giving them that authority to use the power. So we have given them the legitimacy. So sometimes we question the various works or the initiatives taken by the government. So that is also very important when it comes to democratic India. So legitimacy as a term has more purpose, more useful when it comes to Indian society. But if you look at China or the communist states, Cuba, or Russia, you can find legitimacy as a term, you can't find such relevance. Because in India, we are talking about RTI, Right Information Act, Right Information. So Right Information Act has been passed in the year 2005. So that act also becomes very important when we have to understand the concept of legitimacy. Legitimacy is the quality that transforms naked power into rightful authority. So if you look at your member of parliament, MLA, who is giving them power? Who are the people who are giving them power? The people of India. So that is all about legitimacy. So legitimacy strengthens your legal system. Legitimacy becomes part and parcel of legal system. So what is rationality? When we are using the word rationality, means we're trying to make things more scientific, or the things which are based on reason. So these two concepts becomes very important in Weberian uh, sociology. Before coming to Max Weber, let me tell you two things. Number one, Aristotle also said about legitimacy. According to Aristotle, legitimacy means a system is only legitimate if it operated to the benefit of the whole society, not just the rulers. So it's all about legitimacy, is all about giving benefits to the society, according to Aristotle. There is another scholar, Rousseau, French political philosopher or the social philosopher. He said, government is the only legitimate if it is based upon the several or based upon the general will, so agreed by the masses. So if you look at these explanations, it means they're talking about people, they're talking about government, they're talking about interrelations, they're talking about interconnectedness, they're talking about interdependence. So this is very interesting to understand. So legitimacy is the perception that power is exercised in a rightful, justified, and acceptable manner. Means legitimacy means it's a kind of perception, it's a kind of notion, it's a kind of idea that power is exercised in a rightful, justified, and acceptable manner. So that you have to keep in your mind that what is the meaning of legitimacy. Now we'll move to the next slide. We will try to understand who is Max Weber and the contribution made by Max Weber, and how Max Weber concept of legitimacy and rationality is very important. First, we'll discuss about Max Weber's. So Max Weber stands as one of the central figures of social sciences in general and sociological theory in particular. So Max Weber, he was born in Germany on April 21, 1864, in a middle-class Protestant family. His father was a well-known politician who played a minor role in his upbringing. Weber's mother had major contribution throughout his life. At the age of 18, at the age of 18, he left home for a short time to attend the University of Heidelberg. He left Heidelberg for military services, and in 1884 he returned to Berlin and to his parents' home to take courses at the University of Berlin. At the University of Berlin, he obtained a university degree in law and eventually a doctorate in political economy. In 1894, Weber joined Freiburg University uh, as a professor of political economy. In 1897, he joined Heidelberg University as a professor of economics. Only at the age of 32, he was considered very young to obtain a professorship at a major German university. However, as a serve personal crisis, the following years forced Weber to suspend his teaching activities and eventually resign his position at Heidelberg. But in 1897, his father died. Shortly thereafter, a serious nervous breakdown occurred in his life from which he never fully recovered. So after his recovery, he became an honorary professor in Heidelberg University in 1903. That Weber was able to begin to return to active academic life. Thereafter, he began to return to regular intellectual work in 1904. In 1904 and 5, he published one of his best-known work, the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. This is the title of the book. It's based on the relationship between capitalism and religion. This book is very important to understand uh, the relationship between two institutions. By 1909, Weber began writing Economy and Society, his most ambitious theoretical and historical work. From 1960 to 1917, he carried out research on the history of world religions like China, India, ancient Judaism. Judaism is also one of the important religion to understand uh, the entire context of religion. His last academic work was a series of lectures that he gave at the University of uh, Freiburg in 1919 to 20, entitled German Economic History, that was based on the history of capitalist development. So, in addition to the major writings produced in this period, Weber undertook a number of other activities. He helped found the German Sociological Society in 1910. His home became a center for a wide range of intellectuals, including sociologists such as George Simmel, Robert Michel, and George Lucas. Weber was also active in politics and wrote essays on the issue of the day. Weber died in June 1920. So Weber intellectual work are considered to be the best for their historical explanation of modern Western societies and their economic, political, legal, and religious development. Weber's major contribution in the field of social sciences are methodological orientation, analysis of social class, theory of legitimacy and religion, so on. So Weber's explanation of social class also becomes very important when you will try to understand the concept of social class. In addition, he focused on the issue of the rise of modern society, the formation of bureaucracy, the development of the modern political state, and comparative world economics. In fact, Weber was a modernist and individualistic in his approach. He brought together various traditions of social thought and formed a unique theoretical perspective based on history, economics, philosophy, law, and comparative historical analysis. Weber, in reality, was influenced by Marxist school of economics and opposed on several fronts, and this led him to formulate a completely different view of the role played by history and economy uh, in social development. So there are some major sociological work of Max Weber. Number one, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, published in the 1905. The Religion of China, published in the 1960. The Religion of India, published in between 1960 and 1970. Ancient Judaism, published in between 1970 and 19. And then Sociology of Religion, published in 1922 in 1922, The City 1922, General Economic History 1923, The Theory of Social and Economic Organization 1925, The Methodology of Social Sciences 1914, a very important book, The Rational Foundation of Music 1958. So there is other book like Max Weber on Law in Economy and Society, from Max Weber, Essays in Sociology. So there are various books written by Max Weber. So you have to go through all this literature to understand uh, the concept of legitimacy as well as the concept of rationality discussed by Max Weber. So some books are very important, like uh, Methodology of Social Sciences, like his book on economy and society, like his book on social organizations, the theory of social and economic organizations. So these books are very important to understand these terms, rationality and legitimacy. So there is another question which becomes very important to understand: how Max Weber defines sociology and how Max Weber distinguishes between science and philosophy. So number one, when we try to understand Max Weber explanation of sociology, Max Weber has attempted his peculiar definition of sociology. He believed that social sciences should also be studied in the same manner as employed in the study of natural sciences. They should aim at the rigor and precision available in the natural sciences. For this purpose, he invented a methodology which would be applicable and useful in the study of both social and natural sciences. Max Weber has given his unique definition of sociology and specified the scope of the subject in his own way. Max Weber definition of sociology is to be found in his book, The Theory of Economics and Social Organizations. So, in this, Weber has defined sociology uh, um, in the following words. Um, quote, sociology is the science which attempts the interpretive understanding of social action in order to arrive at a causal explanation of its course and effects, means results. So first we have to understand this definition by Max Weber brings into relief three important facts. Firstly, we may assert that definitions, uh, according to Weber, the chief purpose of sociology is to understand the nature and the causes of the social action. Secondly, it tries to map out the causal pattern of social action. Thirdly, it aims at knowing the results of social action. A study of social thought of Max Weber clearly reveals that in his conception of sociology, it is intimately concerned with social action. Therefore, in order to comprehend the conceptual framework of Max Weber, it is necessary to discuss the idea and meaning of the term social action. Interpretive sociology explains Weber considers the individual and his action as the basic unity, as its atom. The individual, the upper limit, and the sole carrier of a meaningful conduct. Such concepts as state, association, feudalism, and the like designate certain categories of human interaction. Hence, Weber concludes it is the task of sociology to reduce the concepts to understandable action that is without exception to the actions of participating individuals. Then. So that kind of explanation, generalization becomes very important to understand the way Max Weber tries to understand sociology. So Max Weber is also considered as one of the founding fathers of sociology. So we have Auguste Comte, who is considered as the founding father, the first person who coined the term sociology. And the second one, we have Emile Durkheim, who is considered as the professional father of sociology. So Max Weber is also considered as the father of interpretive sociology. So if you differentiate between Max Weber, Weberian, and uh, Durkheimian sociology, you'll find that Durkheim was talking about value-free sociology or value-neutral sociology, but Max Weber uh, focuses more on, he has emphasized more on the values. So there should be values. There should not be value-free sociology. There should be some subjectivity. We should focus on subjectivity also. So Durkheim was talking about objectivity, more about objectivity, and Max Weber was talking about both objectivity and subjectivity. Subjectivity means we're talking about the experiences or the experiences of the peoples. Objectivity means we're talking about more about scientific, more about rationality, more about reason. But somewhere qualitative research also becomes very important. So both qualitative and quantitative research, Max Weber has explained in his writings. So when it comes to distinction between natural and social sciences, Max Weber does not recognize any fundamental difference between social and physical sciences. He wants to raise the social science to the level of physical sciences in matters of rigor and precision. However, a number of contemporary thinkers held views divergent from those of Weber. Therefore, in order to appreciate the views of Weber, it must know something about the views of German thinkers living at the time of Max Weber. In the present times of Max Weber, German social thought had the impress of Kant philosophy. So, if you look at Kant's philosophy, it also becomes very important. Under these views, social and physical, what truths this uh, Parit fields having no common points of meeting, therefore it was not possible to extend the laws of one field to another. The social laws were different from the physical laws and could not in any manner be derived from the latter. The physical laws were completely objective and the same uh, level of objectivity could not be achieved in matter of social sciences. So that is very important. If you look at social sciences, we are dealing with human emotions, human thinking. But if you look at natural world, they are dealing with more about the objective of the objective world. So it becomes very easy for them to understand or to adopt scientific principles as compared to the social sciences who are dealing with very kind of various kinds of dynamics or the social dynamics or the because people are changing from time to time and they're changing instantly, and that becomes a big challenge for social scientists. So now I will move to the next slide, and this is about Max Weber's methodology. This is also one of the most important aspects to understand legitimacy and rationality. And before understanding rationality and legitimacy, it becomes very important to understand Max Weber's methodology. So this lecture is all about uh, understanding Max Weber. So Max Weber is considered as one of the most important thinkers when it comes to sociology of law. So I request each one of you, please go through the lecture, please listen more carefully, please try to note down the points that I am mentioning in this lecture, and you have to listen it more carefully because this is a real lecture on Max Weber's understanding or interpretation of legitimacy and rationality. And so you should be clear with Max Weber, the German sociologist, a very renowned sociologist. So what is Max Weber methodology? What is methodology? Methodology means we're talking about a process that we adopt during um, any social issue, or when we are trying to understand any social issue and we are adopting different methodology. Methodology means we are talking about tools, techniques, methods, and when we are gathering the data, and the data can be qualitative as well as quantitative. So qualitative means we're talking about more about the subjective world, and quantitative means we're talking more about the objective world. Weber's methodology is primarily related to Methodonstreit or the German debate about the proper method for the social sciences, but Weber wanted the social sciences should seek causal arguments that would generalize about actions and would pay attention to the context in which an action occurs. In this sense, Max Weber conceived of sociology as a comprehensive science of social action. In order to comprehend the meaning of social action, Weber prescribes the application of two important interrelated methods. So he has discussed about two important concepts. Number one is Verstehen. Verstehen means understanding. Verstehen is German word, and that means understanding, and ideal types construction. So ideal types, he used the term ideal types to understand, to measure the various social issues, to measure uh, the various social phenomena. So these two concepts become very important. So if you look at Weber's methodological work appears in two writings. First, in the work entitled uh, Rocher and Nice, The Logical Problem of Historical Economics, written between 1902 to 1903, and the second work called Objectivity in Social Science and Social Policy, written between 1903 and 1904. In order to understand Weber's methodology, we have to look some of the methodological issues that was developed between 1880 and 1900. In this context, the methodological view of two of the neo Kantian thinkers, uh, Wilhelm Windelband and Henrik Rickert have to be considered. So please remember the names of these thinkers, and please try to understand. So Weber was also talking about value relevance. In order to understand Weber's methodological orientation of Verstehen and ideal types construction, it necessary to look the notion of values in neutral and social sciences. The concept of value relevance is used by Rickert. Rickert uh, thought that the principle of value relevance comes into play when scientists use concepts without concept formation. There is no understanding. Thus, concept act as a mean of separating the essential from the inessential. Hence, the historical sciences are dependent upon the process of selection from the empirical reality in order to arrive at their subject matter. So please remember, Weber he emphasizes more on values, uh, or the subjectivity. So please try to understand that Max Weber methodology is also talking about value neutrality, talking about different values, and these all concepts becomes very important to understand Weberian legitimacy and rationality. So now come to the next topic, that is about Weber's concept of law and of a mature legal system. So Weber's concept of law and of a mature legal system becomes very important. I think you're clear about what is the meaning of legal system. Now I will tell you about what is Weber's concept of law and the legal system. So Weber theory of law then does not turn on the identification of any particular source of law, nor on the establishment of any proper content for law. Rather, it's a theory of law that emphasizes the mode of administration of rules and norms. So, if you look at the structure of such administration, is very crucial. It requires a staff of persons charged with responsibility for ensuring compliance with the law is ensured through the existence of coercive sanctions, but such sanctions have no inherent form. Weber theory of legal system turned not only on the presence of an enforcement stock but also on the methods used by the stock to administer the law. In Weber's views, the pursued most mature type of legal system was one in which the law is administered in a formally rational manner, that is, in a logical and internally coherent manner. So Weber maintained that the administration of law, both establishment of legal norms and application of those legal norms to concrete facts, could be either rational or or irrational in either a formal or a substantive sense. Administration of the law is irrational if it is not guided by general rules. Thus, administration is formally irrational to the extent that it employs means which cannot be controlled by the intellect. For instance, when this recourse is had to oracles or substitutes therefore. Administration is substantially irrational to the extent that particular cases are decided on ethical, emotional, or political reaction to the fact of particular case. In contrast, administration of law is deemed rational to the extent that it is guided by general rules. Thus, a substantively rational legal system decides cases by reference to empirical fact and logical analysis, with a system of rules recognized as binding. In other words, substantively, when we have to understand this particular explanation of Max Weber, please keep in your mind that uh, when Webb was talking about law and of a mature legal system, he was trying to focus more on the rational legal system that already we have discussed in legitimacy, the types of authority, three types of authority: traditional, then charismatic, and then and rational legal. So rational legal authority or the legitimacy becomes very important in Weberian interpretation of legitimacy and rationality. So Weber's theory of mature legal system maybe is one in which norms and rules are administered by staff of a person in a formally rational manner. However, those subjects to such a formally rational legal system were also those most likely to accept a legal order as legitimate. To understand why this is so necessary, to examine the concept of legitimacy. So now we will try to understand a Max Weber understanding of legitimacy. So what is the meaning of legitimacy? How Max Weber defines the concept of legitimacy? So when it comes to legitimacy discussed by Max Weber, so Max Weber maintained that a legal system are legitimate if those subject to the system have made a value judgment that the laws promulgated by the system ought to be obeyed. Weber recognized the inherent obstacles to ascribing value judgments to others. Nevertheless, Weber postulated that one could infer that a value judgment concerning the validity of the legal system had been made by observing the empirical fact of general compliance with the law. It was Weber's belief in this fact value distinction that lay at the foundation of this his account of the way in which legitimacy can be established. So, how Max Weber defines legitimacy? So, Weber viewed the legitimacy of the legal system as central to the meaning and force of the rule of law. Legitimacy or belief is the existence or legitimate order. So, when we have to understand the legitimacy, please keep in your mind that we are talking about uh, a kind of belief, a kind of consent that becomes very important to understand. When it comes to Max Weber, so he's talking about the prestige of being considered binding and has the consequence that those who accept the legitimacy of their legal system will view its rules as valid. This acceptance of the legal system then serves to guide the conduct of those subject to the law. Two forces are identified as significant to the concept of legitimacy. The first is belief in the validity of law. So when it comes to legitimacy, it also means belief in the validity of law, either because one is in agreement with the content of the rule or because one accepts the authority of the power establishing the rule. The second is the notion that this belief in the rule or the authority will motivate compliance. Belief will produce conforming behavior, while compliance with the rules of a legal system is neither a necessary nor a sufficient basis for establishing that there is acceptance of its legitimacy. Compliance may be an so indism of that acceptance. Of course, compliance may be the consequence of a coercive force, while non-compliance may stem from something other than a denial of the legitimacy of legal system. So Weber pointed out that even a thief can be seen as recognizing the validity of the criminal law through his surreptitious conduct, which reflects his belief that he must act in a way to avoid detection and to foreclose punishment. Other deviations from legal conforming conduct can be explained by good faith error on the part of citizens and differences in interpretations of the meaning of legal system. Good faith errors or differences in interpretation results from the necessary ambiguity of language and the lack of transparency in intersubjective expression of the will. So this is all about Max Weber's explanation of legitimacy. So please remember that Max Weber is considered as one of the most important thinker when it comes to legitimacy. And the lecture on legitimacy, uh, there also we have discussed about the Max Weber concept of authority or the legitimacy. So when it comes to legitimacy, then his book Economy and Society, published in the year 1940, becomes very important to understand. So Weber's main aim of these theories to see how political power manifested itself in different historical contexts. Generally, he used the term domination and authority interchangeably in his discussion, both derived from the German word Herrschaft. So, Herrschaft as the master's ability to obtain the obedience of those who theoretically owe it to him. In fact, Weber's concept, uh, Herrschaft, is used for authority domination. So, Weber also discussed about three kinds of legitimacy authority: traditional, charismatic, and rational legal. So, according to Max Weber, rational legal authority becomes one of the most important as in the contemporary uh, world as compared to the two like traditional or charismatic. So you have to remember that rational legal authority becomes is one of the most important as compared to other rest of the two. So that you have to discuss about, and now we'll move to the next topic, rationality. So Weber's concept of rationality and rationalization are central to his theoretical, conceptual, methodological writings. So he used these concepts with reference to Protestant capitalism, bureaucracy, social action, and lab construction. He also discusses the notion of rationality in sociological investigation and value-free sociology. Rationality refers to those ideas and behavior which are logically coherent and consistent and amenable to empirical knowledgeable. Rationalization refers to the process whereby rationality is applied to various aspects and activities of life. The conviction that rationality is the distinctive characteristic of human beings has made it a central theme in Western philosophy for over 200 years. According to Weber, the modern Western world is characterized by rationality. Rationality and the process of rationalization are very much related to rational action. Weber thought that all spheres of society, which that is like economic, political, legal spheres in modern world, underwent the process of rationalization. To Weber, rationalization means the principle that are no uh, there are no principally there are no uh, principally there are no mysterious forces that come into play, but rather one can in principle master all things by calculation. One need no longer have recourse to magical means in order to master or implore the spirits as did the savage for whom such mysterious power existed. So rationalization depends on two types of activities. Number one, strategies of social action. Number two, adjustment of the means and the ends of action in the attainment of goal. So, my dear student, please remember this particular understanding, and I hope you will understand it. And now we will move to the next slide, and this is about criticism of Weber's concept of law and legal system or the legitimacy. So now we will try to understand law and legitimacy, criticism of Weber's concept of law and legitimacy. So, if you look at Max Weber, theory of the formally rational legal system, you will be able to understand that how Max Weber tries to understand this concept of law and legitimacy. Weber theory of law and legitimacy, it will be asserted that not only was Weber's theory of the formally rational legal system unrealistic, but also the Weber's approach to the issue of legitimacy was fundamentally misconceived. Number one, criticism of formally rationality. So Weber postulated that a formally rational legal system was the system most likely to be accepted as legitimate. However, the formulation of the criteria for a legitimate legal system is self-refuting. First, it is axiomatic that the ideal of a gapless. So first, it is axiomatic that the ideals of gapless system, one in which there is an abstract legal norm corresponding to every conceivable fact situation, is simply not realizable in a world of social and economic activity characterized by dynamic change and evolution. Second, the very nature of language precludes that absolute. So that these things are very important for you to understand the criticism of Max Weber's legitimacy and how Max Weber criticizes this particular theory. So, with clarity, that would be necessary for the kind of mechanical non-discriminatory. So, clarity that would be necessary for the kind of mechanical non-discriminatory law making or law finding activity that Weber maintained is characterized are characteristics of a mature, legitimate and legal system. Finally, it seems uh, uh, apparent that a method of pure logical analysis is insufficient to separate legal norms from the social and value systems in which they are necessarily. So, what is the criticism of Weber's concept of legitimacy? Two problems are implicit in Weber's note, a position that procedural procedural formality and a subjective view of the binding effect of legal system are necessary and sufficient conditions for inferring that a legal system is legitimate. The first problem that Weber distinctly recognized that when compliance is solely the consequence of coercion, it cannot be assumed that those persons subject to the legal system accept its legitimacy. As Weber acknowledged, any action, including an act of compliance, is motivated by a mixture of motives. Is motivated by a mixture of motives. Nevertheless, for Weber, the mere act of compliance became a basis for inferring that an actor recognizes the legitimacy of legal system. Clearly, this inference is unfounded. There is no basis for inferring the presence of any particular motive from the single fact of compliance, nor does the fact that a legal system remains stable provide a basis for inferring, inferring, inferring basis for inferring that those subject to it view it as a legitimate. It was a mere article of faith on the part of Weber that a legal order which is stable is viewed as legitimate rather than as effectively uh, coercive. The second problem involves the process of imputing motives, beliefs, or basis for conduct to an actor. As will be discussed below, Weber attempted to avoid this problem by distinguishing the comprehension of an actor particular belief from the observation that an actor holds some set of beliefs. Weber approach, however, does not resolve the problem of determining whether an actor is motivated by some set of beliefs other than a beliefs that he is threatened by coercive force. If action is to be explained in part by the fact that an action is motivated by a particular set of beliefs, then some understanding of what beliefs the actor actually holds must be obtained. Of course, it may be that one can never know what beliefs an actor in fact holds. This would mean that a theory of legitimacy that is rooted in identifying actors' particular set of subjective beliefs may be doomed from the outset. So it's very important to understand both these concepts like legitimacy uh, and 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 rationality. And please remember one thing. Please keep in your mind Weber's explanation, interpretation, or understanding of legitimacy or the legal system is very important, and you have to understand Weber's number one legal system. How Max Weber understand legal system. Number two, how Max Weber understands this law, how Max Weber understands legitimacy, and how Max Weber explains or interprets rationality. So please remember, you have to go through his two or three books. Number one is Economy and Society, and there is one other book on social organizations. And please remember, please keep in mind, Weber's methodology is based on Austrian understanding and ideal types. Ideal types is a measuring rod. So there is no need to get panic uh, from his theories, because his theories are very simple to understand. His theory will give you a deeper understanding of the legal system. You will be more aware about his explanation um, uh, of everything. So if you look at legitimacy, the term has been used by Max Weber in his theory of legitimate authority to indicate the extent to which officials, groups, and individuals actually acknowledge the validity of a ruler in an established order and the right of a ruler to issue commands. So legitimacy means we're talking about one belief. So it's a kind of belief on the ruler. So you have to understand both. First, you have to understand the concept of state. You have to understand its citizens also, because it becomes very important to understand the duality. So both in a democratic setup, both you have to understand. You have to understand people's perception about the ruler also. So in India, if you look at India, we have multicultural or the diverse ideologies. So people have different understanding about a particular set of government. So that is also very important to understand. So legitimacy always remains in question. So there is no definite or accurate explanation of legitimacy. It changes from context to context. So what is rational? Weber used the term rational to refer to types of social order, orientation to social actions. In the first case, rational societies demonstrate the development of a law, which is so. What is rationality? This is a key concept in Weber's work, used to refer to a standard action whose substance lies in its so calculable or rational commerce of a particular orientation to reality with respect to orientation to social action. Rational refers to various means and calculation which increase the attainment of practical outcomes and social goals. So, what is rationality? This is a key concept in Weber's work used to refer to standard of action whose substance lies in weighing up of means and ends. Weber essentially used the term to describe orientation to reality, which systematically weighs of means and ends, purposes of efficacy, and the practical attainment of goals. Weber believed that different types of rationality become dominant at different stages of social development, and this tends to eliminate other orientation to reality, such as magic, prayer, or other considerations. So please go through the lecture, please listen more carefully, and please go through PPT study material that I will share with you. And please have a very good understanding of Weber's understanding of both legitimacy and rationality. If there will be any query, you can ask me through mail or you can contact me. So now I will stop here. Thank you so much.